This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. I've got a conversation with an Australian music industry icon to share with you. I'm talking about a chat with Steve Kilbey, frontman and bassist from The Church. And it must be said, a fella who has an illustrious solo career. Now, the catalyst for the chat with Steve is due to the launch. Well, not a launch. It's an Australian tour. An Australian tour which is happening from the 1st to the 10th of September 2022, taking in select capital cities across our wide brown land. I won't read out the dates because God knows well over 80% of you live abroad who are listening, and the dates will probably be meaningless. So if you are in Australia and you are interested, go across to the group's website or Facebook page, and I'm sure they will be easily found there. In the chat, we talk about bass playing, the enduring nature of the big hit for The Church, Under the Milky Way, and there's also an exchange about a deep cut buried within Steve's solo career, and you're just going to have to stick around and find out what that's all about. So I'm not going to play a tune. We're going to dive into the conversation straight away. Here he is, Steve Kilbey from The Church. Steve, can you hear me?
I can. Andrew McKay Smith.
Lovely to make your acquaintance again. We have actually spoken, is it once before? Maybe more than once, but either way, it was a very enjoyable chat. So I must say I've been looking forward to our meeting again.
Thank you.
I'm a bass guitarist.
What?
I'm a bass guitarist, and I think your bass guitar work is underrated.
Look, to tell you, is this the interview?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm pretty free-flowing, so go for it.
Look, I'm not really much of a bass guitarist in the traditional sense. And because I've always played and sung, is it sang or sung? I can't get the right past tense. Because I've always played and sang at the same time, my sort of bass playing is I sort of lope along. So it kind of, I did accidentally stumble on a nice way of playing bass. It's nothing to write home about. It's not, unless you like the way I lope along, because that's what I sort of do. And it's always interesting when in the studio the other day, or a couple of years ago, with Ashley Naylor, and he said, I'm going to play bass on this track. And he gave him a 6-string bass. And he was playing it like a bass player. He was playing it like this. Yeah, groovy. I always notice guitarists always do this thing when they play bass. They play the way they think a bass player should play. And it's very hard to say what that is, but you know it when you hear it. It's this. Marty used to do it too. He played just like a bass, like they imagine a bass player would play. I don't play like that. I'm just sort of running along like I'm just following the music along. I'm not laying down any foundations. Occasionally, yes, but usually as I'm singing, the bass is sort of running along. But there are so many bass players, and I listen to them, and I even see like 9-year-old girls on Instagram or something playing bass, doing all that tapping, and I'm like, wow. But it was never my ambition to play like that. It was I don't know. I sort of have a different take on what my bass should be. And it should sort of always be, the sound of it should always be sort of warm and round and fat.
You play with groove, though. What you're alluding to earlier about guitarists who play bass is they have no understanding of beat and groove. I've seen it so many times. And you play with a lot of groove.
Well, thank you. That if I do, and I will take that compliment, if I do, let me say when I started, I didn't have a hell of a lot of groove. So I have found my groove over the years. I really, when you see a really when you see a really good guitarist and you think of all the tricks they must have up their sleeve that they could play on the bass, and then instead of doing that, they sort of do this. They're trying too hard to sort of, I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. That's for sure. And I don't like that approach to bass, even when you do get the real bass players who sort of do that sort of thing. I don't know. It's very hard to know what I'm talking about, but I know it when I hear it.
I understand completely. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've worked at for decades now about groove and finding the deep groove in the pocket. And I often call it the heel and toe methodology. Okay, so I play covers, and when you're playing covers, you're really playing for the girls to dance. No matter what the song is, you want the girls dancing, because when the girls dance, the whole room lifts. And if you can't do that, it's actually the bass player's job to do that, believe it or not. And as a bassist, if you can't do that, you're not doing your job.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It's a big job.
Got to make the girls. Yeah, it's a huge job, mate. Making the girls dance.
Yeah, you got to put some funk into it. You got to put some Brothers Johnson into it, as I like to say. And if you can't do that, then you better get listening to some Brothers Johnson.
Wow. All right.
Look, let's talk about the church, because look, I have read the presser, and I understand one of the key reasons that you've offered for performing the church's music is that it's too big a body of work not to keep exploring it. Agreed, by the way. But do you still enjoy performing the church's music, or would you rather?
Yes.
You do. Okay, good.
No, I do. I really enjoy it. The other night we did a corporate gig, and it's like a warm-up gig as well for this coming tour, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was like I imagine how it might feel being in a football team that's firing on all cylinders, and everybody's just in the right place at the right time. You don't have to worry. You know, when you turn around to pass the ball, that skeezer's going to be there.
The way, exactly, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and it was, I just really, it was so easy. It's not going to be so easy. We didn't do any new songs at this corporate gig. We were just doing sort of ones that we knew pretty well. But when we learn these new songs, it's going to be a challenge, and hopefully I get a real thrill out of playing a new song, and, you know, not quite sure everybody knows what's going to happen. I think that's sort of flying by the seat of your pants. So there's a few songs, and our new album's kind of gone a bit proggy. Definitely the most proggy album we've ever made. Sort of, we stepped up the musicality. When we were writing these songs, for the first time ever, everybody in the band, as we were writing them, was thinking of all the parameters that we could possibly alter, things you may not normally do. And I don't know, it's sort of like more complex music than, you know, sort of our first album. It's sort of, whether that's a good thing or not is going to be really up to the listeners to decide. But I'm really enjoying this sort of, I say proggy for want of a better word. It's sort of, an Italian album really impressed me, and not a lot of people talk about it. Lou Reed, Rock and Roll Animal. Have you ever heard that album?
I know of its existence, but I can't say I'm familiar with it.
Live
Go
album.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. It's a sort of album of this, a guy coined this phrase to talk about us, guitar architecture. But it's like, it was this album that had two like lead guitarists and a really good bass player and keyboard player, but these two lead guitarists, and they're sort of like, the songs sort of have this sort of architecture to them. Beyond Jingle Jangle, it's like moving on from Jingle Jangle to sort of more orchestral lines with the guitars. And we're also exploring a lot more tuneful ambience and using the guitars to create sort of like, I guess what would be orchestral sounds, which could have been strings or trombones or French horns or something, generating that with a guitar, but kind of sort of having these really fleshed out arrangements with everybody in the band using all their knowledge and skill to try and make the songs as great as, make the church great again. So that's what it is, and more complex and more experimental. However, amongst all of that, there's sort of 2 or 3 classic sort of songs that are like the church that we always do. So it's not all hard work.
You're surrounded by a great team, and I imagine at this point in time, you could pretty much pick who you want to work with. So you have chosen Ian from Powderfinger and also Ash Taylor, who you mentioned before, who was in a band. I remember even back in the day.
Yeah.
So is this your dream team at the moment?
And might I add, we also have a 5th member, Jeffrey Kane, who was the guitarist and songwriting guy behind an American band called Remy Zero. They weren't too big in Australia, but they were pretty big in America and England for a while. So he's joined as well on guitar and keyboards. It is the dream team. Yeah, I think we're everybody's. Some people are better at music than others. It's like the things you bring to a band and things you bring to the music aren't just virtuosity. There's these sort of feelings and these desires. And I think with the group of people we've got right now, there's just this wonderful, God, I'm talking some real cliches today. There's this wonderful symbiotic sort of gestalt playing and feeling where everybody's bending towards us. Like, once again, it's like the football team analogy. Everybody's moving towards this idea of how to do things. And it's sort of without stopping sounding like the church, within our own sort of thing, we have really, with this group of players, we have really progressed.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Do you give them much freedom to interpret classic material?
I think I have never said to the players, to either of those guitarists, play it like this or like that. They usually start off being pretty much how it was, and then sometimes they sort of soup it up a little and muscle it up a little, and other times they've played it really straight and even sort of de-escalated the sound. So they pretty much play the same lines. Obviously the solos are now their own, but their sounds are kind of, it's guys with these great big pedal boards, and that's the thing, isn't it? I don't get involved. I don't get involved in the sort of guitar sounds particularly. It's kind of bewildering to me. I'm so glad. I realize I have to go on stage and remember the bass and remember how to sing and remember the words, but that's it. These guys have to go on and play their guitars, but then they've got these bewildering sort of setups and chains of all their guitar pedals that, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. That's why I would never be a guitarist in a band. I sort of like a piano player. I just want my piano to sound like a piano. Sit down at the piano and it's always going to sound. That's how I feel about the bass. There's no effects. There's no nothing, Maybe I might go wild and have an echo on it or something, but I pretty much let the sound man do whatever he wants to do with it. But so I'm glad all that technology and pedals is left to somebody else. I don't know if it has to be as complicated as they make it. But you know, when you get a guitar player he comes in with his pedal board and that's it. You know, you don't. It'd be very rude to say, "Hey, can you turn that fucking flanger off?" I reckon.
Yeah.
You just got to. They normally come to the right conclusion, I think, on their own.
The biggest issue I've found playing with musicians, guitarists specifically, who have a lot of things in a row on a pedal board or one of those enormous fractal systems or Axe FX systems or what have you, they forget the bloody things and leave them at home when you're out in the middle of Queensland, you know, playing a gig at Billawheeler or somewhere like that. And you're like, well, what are you going to do? And they're like, well, we've just got to play the gig. And you think, just simplify your sound to a point where if the inevitable disaster occurs, and it almost happens to everybody at least once. For example, how many times has the battery case busted on your bass when you're on stage and you're like, what's going on? Meaning that the battery's either flat or the battery case itself has stopped working. I play Music Man basses, so that's happened a couple of times. But you've always got to have contingency, whether it's another guitar or whether it's awareness of your rig. So as if there's a problem, the show can still go on.
I think there's a load of problems with guitar pedals, and I thought the one you were going to say, we never have forgetting because we have, you know, it's all packed up and usually us down the airport loading it all on the plane at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I think the trouble with pedal boards is sometimes they go hideously wrong and the guy jumps in and he thinks he's going to have some quiet ambient thing going and then suddenly you've got blah! It sort of just jumps out of nowhere. That happens a bit. It's also worth remembering that, say, a band like Television or even the Beatles, they just went straight into their amps, and there is something beautiful about an electric guitar in an amplifier that doesn't. I don't think any guitarists. I don't know if there's many doing it that way anymore. I was thinking about this the other night, saying to the guys in the band, "I've got a brilliant idea. Let's do something really original. Have no pedals." Just the amp and the guitar and whatever you can get out of it. Like there's a bit of reverb in those amps, you know, but that's it. And if you really want some delay on a guitar, something you can put it on with later on.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I just play straight. I used to have a big, it used to be set up behind me here because I used to be testing it out all the time, but big Gallian-Kruger system with compressor. And what else did I have in there? It went through a chain anyway, and it was always this 9 megahertz buzz coming back off it. The other night, I just plugged my little backup amp into the speaker box straight, and I didn't even use it through the desk, and voila. And I could feel it because it's hitting the back of your legs. You know what I'm talking about with the amps. They hit the back of your legs and it feels great.
You know what? Guess what sort of amp I use?
You might not use one. You might use a feedback. Feedback. Yeah.
I plug straight in and I love it. And I'm not a big fan of bass amps. I've got this beautiful Fender bass and it's got a beautiful sound. And as soon as I put it through anything at all, it ain't going to sound like that. And when I put it into the foldback through a sounds amp just to boost, the DI, give it a boost. It's a little bit under if you don't have something boosting the sound up.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I can. Well, I mean, you're an international artist, and you've got to have something that you got to a bit different to what I'm doing as a local yokel on the stages around Brisbane and Queensland. So, hey, with it, Under a Milky Way, that song has been covered almost more than it could be. Yeah, there's probably other songs that have been covered by an Australian artist as much, but certainly as a cursory glance, I don't think any other song has been covered as much as that one, as broadly either by notable artists I'm talking about. So Eskimo Joe, Sia, Craig O'Bay, that big hit that I think he had a big hit with a remix version of it a few years ago. Jimmy Little did a version. George did a version as well. Which one's your favourite?
Crowded House.
Crowded House. I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they did one this year, and it was really muted. It was really, oh wow, he really, very clever man. He got another emotion out of the song. He sort of really, I don't know, milked the disappointment that, like I sort of gloss over the song. I think my version is very much, I'm a singer singing a song, but when Neil did it, he really brought some dimension, a fourth dimension to the whole thing, I think. And he really, although I've heard it so many times, he really found something else in it. Jimmy Little found something beautiful in it as well.
I listened to that this morning.
The Killers used to do it as a live encore as well.
Wow. These are prominent names. These are huge names you're talking about.
Wow. Yeah, but
it's a great cosign for you. But isn't it a great cosign for your songwriting, for your talents as a songwriter, that such a broad range of artists, as prominent as what they are, pick that song up?
It's sort of, when it's just one song though like that, it's sort of, the song is more well-known than you are. You know what I mean? It's sort of like,
yeah, dude. It transcends you.
I'm glad to have had one big hit, but it would have been nice, to have a few more. And it wasn't just that one. But having said that, at least I've got the one.
Does its enduring success intrigue you insofar as you're on record as having written something like over 1,000 songs that are in the APRA catalogue? So that one song, In and Amongst Them All, if you had all of your work laid out before you when you're in, say, late 20s, early 30s, this sort of thing, right when you're in the prime of the church, would that be the song that you'd pick and say, this is the one?
Under the Milky Way? No. No, I wouldn't. I find it hard to define myself by one song, but if it was that, I wouldn't mind. I'm glad it is. I'm glad it's a sort of an okay song. I'm glad it wasn't a sort of a novelty or some stupid sort of. I'm glad it was that, but
yeah. I know we disagreed last time on this point, but I think one of your greatest songs
what was that?
Is As You Like It. I think As You Like It's one of your finest tunes.
Are you talking about As You Like It, this one I wrote for this movie, Reckless Kelly?
Correct.
Are you joking?
No. That's what I'm saying. We disagreed on it last time.
Oh, my God.
That's a great tune. It's got a wonderful groove to it. It doesn't sound like anything else in your catalogue. I was surprised. I was surprised it was.
Where did you hear that?
I'm 44, so that movie was right smack bang in the middle of my teenage years, and I bought the soundtrack. And the song that was easily the best song on the soundtrack. It was a grower. It didn't jump out at first, but I listened to that soundtrack to death. And your song, for a fairly maudlin young fella in a bloody southern boarding school as I was, that was a bit of a touchstone, that song.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't it strange? I haven't thought about that song for 100 years. But that's so strange that someone out there liked that humble, sort of knocked together song.
No, it's killer.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great song. I mean, but this is the thing about great songwriters like you, is that you don't know how you affect people until you get the feedback. You sort of put it out there, and it's out there. Yeah.
It's like firing arrows out into the world. It really is. You're firing arrows out, and you don't know if any of them hit anybody, or you don't know how you're hitting them, and you don't realize You know, you do a song one day for a movie, and I just say a kid in a boarding school liked it. That's really cool.
I think it was your vocal take on that one too. If you can remember how many takes it took for you to get the version that was then published, because I remember listening to that. You're right.
I'd say one or two. I would have gone in there and said, "Hey, I've got some lyrics. Let's try this," and then I would have sung it, and then probably the engineer said, "Okay, now let's do it again. That's good," and then I would have probably sung it like maybe a third time, but that would have been it.
I've used it
as a double track. Is it double track?
Yeah,
it must be. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It must be. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about the chorus bit. Yeah, because it doesn't. I mean, it's just got that love doesn't come as you like it. You know, you've got that vocal cadence in that bit there. And I've used it as you can tell. I've used it as a touchstone in the car when I'm on the way to a gig, and I sing along to that one to warm up.
Wow, that's fucking bizarre. It really is. Well, that's really strange to me. It's sort of like, it's like going on a holiday to Greenland and the guy staying in the room next door to you is somebody you know. It's sort of like, to me, it's so unlikely that anyone would ever like that song or ever mention it. So that's made my day.
I think it hints at, you know, I'm heaping on the praise here, but I think it hints at your qualities as a songwriter, that you can have a song like that affects a bloke you don't know. You know. As
you're a very complimentary. You're a very complimentary young man. You know that. Thank you for all the kind things you say. It's always nice. Some days you think, wow, you know, like nobody likes what I do, and then next day you hear something nice about a song you've completely forgotten about. So thank you. I'm really happy to hear this.
No, my pleasure. Yeah. Somebody else who I got into it around about the same time who had an effect on me was Peter Murphy in Bauhaus. Now, I could be wrong. Well, yeah, you guys mates, because I'd love to see you guys collaborate if it hasn't already happened. Yeah.
No, we were mates. When he went solo, he had to open for us, and he wasn't very happy about that. In 1988, and we never became mates.
That's a shame.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know if there's room enough in one town for him and I. Maybe we're too much of, in some ways, got too many similarities.
I've now spoken to you both, and I tell you what, you're very similar as people. Just in the 5 minutes or so we've been talking for, you know, that's the impression that I get. I've always thought of you as artists in tandem, you know, but yeah, maybe it's a case of being two alike. Yeah.
What a shame. He could have been my best mate in the world and we never really hit it off.
Well, you could have done something like what Queen did with David Bowie on Under Pressure, but your version. There's so much great music that I think in my head. You know, I do a lot of swimming, right? I'm a compulsive swimmer, and I think about the random thoughts coming outside of all of the usual stuff about raising family and the job and all the rest of it. I think about
music.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say I swim too, and I think about music as I swim up and down in the pool, and I solve little musical problems for myself. Hey, what's the time?
Have you got to head off because it's 27 past 12 now?
Let's wrap it up, as they say.
I've got literally 100 more questions to ask, but that's cool. What can I say? It's always great to talk to you. I love your music, as you can tell. Good luck with the tour. I don't think you'll need it because the quality of the songs is going to carry you guys across, and the band sounds killer, to your point.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Steve. I'll see you up here in Brisbane.
Okay, mate.
Thanks, mate. Catch
Bye.
up. Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. Steve Kilbey, what a fella. And I wasn't joking when I said I had many more questions to ask him and topics to discuss, but that's all good because we'll save it for next time. I've written a book, Scars and Guitars, Tales from the World of Heavy Metal and Beyond, Volume 1. Go to scarsandguitars.com, click on the link in the banner. It'll come up straight away as soon as you go to scarsandguitars.com. Click on that link and you'll be taken to a marketplace of your choice and you can download a sample. If you do complete the purchase, do hit me up because I want to thank you personally. There's a lot more to say about the book and that will be done after I bid you a fond farewell. So my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. Until next time, it is a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot. And
we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.